Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, Covent Garden. Welcome back to our kitchen. For this series, we've teamed up with our great friends, Gressingham, for all things duck. For those who don't know, Gressingham duck is a unique breed of duck, and it's meaty and succulent, and there's more breast meat, and that's what I love about it. Less fat and rich and gamey in flavour, and really brings out the depth of duck that it should be. This Saturday Special series is all about celebrating Chinese New Year and more. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and thanks to Gressingham. This week's Saturday Special, roast duck, noodle soup, classic Cantonese dish, just a quicker version. There's a few different techniques to this, but we're going to start with the Gressingham duck legs. Let's get cooking. So I'm going to follow a similar process to if I was using a whole duck, and that is the Chinese way of dealing with sort of slightly fattier meats. And that's the skin that's the fatty in the duck. Is to blanch it first in hot water. And that just sort of tightens up the skin. And then when I marinate it and then roast it later on, you'll get a really nice crisp sort of glaze around the skin. So outside of sort of tighten that skin up, what you're trying to do is get rid of the sort of fatty impurities or the scum that comes up at the top of the water. It doesn't take long, sort of 2 minutes or so, and then you can take your duck legs out again. It's worth just running that under some cold water so it's easier to deal with. So I'm going to start with some ginger and spring onion for flavour. You want your ginger and spring onion nice and finely chopped. And like with most meats, if you have time to sort of leave it for at least a few hours with the marinade on, then you're going to get more flavour from it. So I'm just going to kind of pile up the ingredients for a marinade in this plate here. Take any dry ends of the spring onion off, and then finely chop your spring onion too. Now, if you're doing a whole duck, you might use all of the whole spices from Five Spice, so star anise, cinnamon stick, a bit of fennel seed, clove, and then your ginger or ginger powder, things like that. But I'm just going to use Five Spice because I'm just doing 2 legs, so it's a little bit simpler, a little bit easier. So roughly sort of 2 teaspoons worth of Five Spice. That's quite a lot of Five Spice. I wouldn't usually use so much, but I want this to really stand out in the duck. Shaoxing rice wine, and then a good amount of salt. So a good heaped teaspoon of salt, and then just mix that together. You're gonna have more flavor later on when I glaze this and roast it, but this is kind of to give the base flavor, that sweet, savoury flavour from the rice wine and the Five Spice. The duck legs, be good to sort of just get under the skin and try and get as much of that flavour into the actual duck itself. Try not to break the skin too much. I've broken it a little bit there, but that's okay. Just enough space to get the flavour into the duck leg. What you want to try and do is kind of almost stuff that marinade in between the skin and the meat. The rest can go around the outside, of course. It's a little bit fiddly, this, but worth the effort. That salt will help to draw out more moisture over the next couple of hours. Just rub the rest around the outside of each piece of duck, and then cover that. Whack it in the fridge, minimum 1 to 2 hours in the fridge so that that salt starts to sort of work on the skin. And then we can make a glaze, roast it later on, and add it to your noodles. My duck legs have marinated for a good few hours now. And that salt should have sat into the skin. All that flavour from the Five Spice and ginger and spring onion. I'm going to make a quick glaze. And this is to brush over the actual duck. Traditionally, for roast Cantonese duck, in the restaurants, they'd use a maltose glaze. And Maltose is like a really thick honey. But honey's fine, so a couple of spoons of hot water just to melt that honey through. And I want a nice red colour on the glaze. So I'm going to use some red wine vinegar for that. You can also get red rice vinegar in Chinese supermarkets, either or, absolutely fine. To get even more of a deep sort of red colour on the glaze, I've got some dark soya sauce, and then a pinch of salt. That's actually more like a teaspoon of salt, just to balance out that honey flavour. So I've got sweet, salty, and a little bit of sour from the vinegar. Make sure that honey is well mixed in and melted through. And then the duck can pop into a little roasting tray. And then you want to brush this glaze over the top. I'll add more glaze as it's roasting. So it's going to roast for about 25 minutes at 200 degrees C. And I want that skin to crisp up nicely. It won't be crispy, but it definitely crisp up and caramelise that glaze over the top. So be generous with that glaze from the start. Into the oven. It's pretty hot, that oven, 200 degrees C. I have no idea who I'm looking at or what I'm seeing. So 200 degrees C, 25 minutes, duck's in the oven. Every sort of 5 or 10 minutes, give it another glaze. So to finish off your duck noodle soup, it's really nice and simple here. Got a base of ginger and spring onion, as with a lot of Chinese cooking. And this ginger, just nice, fine slices. Spring onion just needs to be rough chunks. I'm going to fry that off. You don't need a lot of oil for this, just enough to kind of sear the ginger nicely and get sort of flavour into the oil before I then add my sauce, which is oyster sauce and some chicken stock. Really simple. Oyster sauce, chicken stock. It's a really quick soup this. The chicken stock is freshly made, which makes all the difference. Just let that simmer away. The only thing I'm going to add to this is a bit of pak choy to the side. The pak choy looks beautiful when you cut it lengthways. And it really doesn't take long to cook your pak choy at all. Look at those guys. So my duck leg, it's got a nice glaze. If you don't have to worry about cutting directly through the bone, so you can slice the meat off nice and easily like that. Careful of the edges. Obviously it's very hot at this point in time, so just go like so. Keep a bit of skin on each piece of duck there. Now to finish this off, you get your noodles into the stock. They don't take long at all. So my noodles have been soaked in hot water already for about 3 or 4 minutes, just to separate out. I don't want them to be too soft. I want them to have a good sort of al dente bite to it. So bring that to a boil for about a minute. So your noodles straight out. You don't need all of that pak choy. I guess it depends how hungry you are. But it's nice for a balance. And this pak choy, because it's been sliced in sort of 8ths already, or you know, quite thin slices, it won't take long to cook at all. Literally like 30 seconds to a minute. It will continue to cook when you pour the soup over the noodles. Just a quick blanch is all it needs. Just layer your vegetables on the side. Let's get this duck over the top. And then the soup, just want to ladle over the top. So, your Cantonese roast duck noodle soup, home style. And that glaze on the duck is delicious. And the soup is really light, savoury flavour, perfect. For more duck recipes and cooking tips, check out the Gressingham website. Don't forget to subscribe.